November 1977. A baby boy came into the world. His mother was a princess. His grandmother was the Queen of England, and that grandmother genuinely wanted her newborn grandson to become a prince. She could have made it happen with a single move. Everything came down to the Queen's one signature. But the baby's mother stood up and said a clear, firm no. 4 years later, a baby girl was born. The Queen repeated her offer. Princess Anne refused again. This is the story of that defining moment, when a princess said no to her own mother, to her own queen, and the story of what that no would come to mean decades later, when nobody was expecting it. When Peter and Zara were born, they were never automatically entitled to royal titles in the first place. The reason goes back to a rule from 1917. That year, King George V issued a strict official order defining exactly who could carry a royal title. Under that order, the title of prince or princess could only pass through the male line, tracing back to the sovereign. The children of the monarch's sons could be royals. The children of his daughters could not. Anne fell entirely outside that rule, so her children had no automatic right from the very beginning. But there was still one door left open. Anne's husband, Captain Mark Phillips, did not come from a noble family. He was an ordinary citizen. Under long-standing royal tradition, a man entering the family in that position would typically be offered an earldom, a noble title of his own. Had the groom accepted, the children could have grown up as a lord and a lady, but he turned that offer down. And Anne stood behind that decision like a rock. This is where our story truly begins, because the Queen could still have stepped in. With a single stroke of her pen, one special arrangement, she could have granted those titles to her grandchildren regardless. The Queen made that offer personally, and Anne said no, again. Anne never spoke at length about this decision in public. But years later, in an interview with Vanity Fair magazine, she summed it all up in a few words. I think it was probably easier for them, and I think most people would argue that there are downsides to having titles. So I think that was probably the right thing to do. Short, clear, and completely closed to debate. A stance that suits Anne's character perfectly. But behind that single sentence lay a far deeper vision. Anne had grown up at the very heart of the royal family and knew exactly what price that life demanded from a person. Never-ending cameras, rules, protocols, and immense public pressure. Every step scrutinized, every word picked apart. And she did not want that kind of cage for her own children. She wanted her children to go to ordinary schools like everyone else, to play sport, to make mistakes, and to earn their achievements with their own hands. In her eyes, a title was not a gift. It was an enormous weight you were condemned to carry on your back for the rest of your life. To understand just how extraordinary and unconventional Anne's decision was, you have to see how far the institution itself was willing to go to protect those titles. That rigid rule put in place in 1917 went unquestioned by almost everyone for nearly 100 years. Until 2011, that year, Prince William and Catherine Middleton announced they were expecting their first baby. Under the old rules, only William's eldest son would automatically become a prince. If the first child was a girl, she would grow up with a lesser title simply because of her gender and would fall behind any younger brother born after her. That prospect was enough to prompt the Queen to act immediately. She issued a new official order and overnight changed a rule that had stood untouched for 94 years. From that point on, all of William's future children, boy or girl, would be a prince or princess. Think about what that means. Official institutions were willing to tear up a century-old rule just so one child would not be left without a title. Yet Anne, within that very same system, had been swimming against the current, not fighting for her children to have titles, but fighting to make sure they never would. So what did this radical decision actually produce? Peter Phillips and Zara Tyndall grew up as ordinary citizens. They went to normal schools like everyone else. They built their careers from scratch, without a royal surname doing the work for them. Zara became a world-famous professional athlete. She became European champion, world champion in equestrian sport. At the 2012 London Olympics, she competed for Team Great Britain and won a silver medal. And on that historic day, do you know who stepped onto that Olympic podium and placed the medal around Zara's neck? Her own mother. Princess Anne, herself a former Olympic athlete, walked forward and hung the medal around her daughter's neck with her own hands. Years later, Zara put it plainly, "Not having a title was my greatest stroke of luck." I'm truly grateful to my mother for that. We were so fortunate to be able to live life by our own rules. Peter followed a similar path, a quiet life far from the cameras, building his own business from the ground up. His two daughters carry no titles today either. The titleless chain Anne started in 1977 has now reached a third generation. But this story has another side, a much darker side. Prince Andrew's daughters, Beatrice and Eugenie, had the full package from the very first second they opened their eyes. Her Royal Highness and Princess. Their father Andrew had specifically wanted it that way. For years, he believed those titles would open doors for his daughters, bring them great opportunities and unshakable prestige. For a while, it genuinely seemed to work, until Andrew's own life came crashing down in disgrace. Years of scandal followed, his official honors stripped away, his military ranks removed, his complete exclusion from the royal family. And suddenly, Beatrice and Eugenie found themselves in an impossible position. They had been born princesses, but their names were bound at the root to a father the palace was desperately trying to distance itself from and sever all ties with. Anne's children, meanwhile, were entirely outside that storm, safe from it all. There was no title to defend, no aristocratic status to be stripped away, no royal name for a scandal to latch onto, because they had never had any of those things to begin with. The titles that Anne had pushed away with the back of her hand all those years ago had, in time, become the one and only shield that could never be turned against her children. The Queen made the offer. Anne said no. In that moment, it seemed like a quiet family decision taken in a whisper in a palace corridor. But decades later, as Zara stood on an Olympic podium collecting a medal, as Peter lived a free life by his own rules, and as Beatrice and Eugenie were crushed beneath the wreckage of their father's shattered reputation, the true weight of that no finally revealed itself. The royal system had thrown out 94 years of rules, just so one child would not be left without a title. Anne, within very same system, had clenched her teeth and fought, so that her children would never become slaves to those titles. In this family, a royal title is not simply a fancy name. That title is a key, one that opens certain doors in front of you, while locking others behind you for life. It brings extraordinary opportunities, but alongside them comes an enormous set of shackles. It looks like freedom, but it is, in truth, a golden chain. Anne saw this before anyone else did. The most straight-talking, least theatrical princess in the royal family made the quietest, and perhaps the most brilliant, move in history. So what about you? If you had been in that same position, could you have said no? If the Queen herself had stood before you and offered you that power, knowing every door that title would open, and knowing everything it would lock shut behind you forever, could you have pushed it away? Anne did, and she never once looked back.